My younger sister disappeared for 11 days and left her 5-year-old daughter asleep on my couch. No suitcase, no explanation. Just Lucy's pink backpack, her stuffed rabbit, and a note in Jenna's handwriting. Don't let Mom take her anywhere alone. By noon, my mother was already standing at my door. She never asked where Jenna was. She never asked whether her own daughter was safe. She looked at Lucy and said, "Keep her. Jenna doesn't deserve another chance to ruin that child." 20 minutes later, Mom was making grilled cheese when Lucy looked up from the kitchen table. "Grandma," Mom smiled. "What, sweetheart?" Lucy tilted her head. "Why does Mommy call you Linda at the yellow house?" The spatula stopped moving. Mom's face changed for maybe half a second. Then she crouched beside Lucy and said very softly, "We don't talk about that house here." That night, after Mom left, Lucy asked me to find her pajamas inside the pink backpack. Underneath them was an old photograph I had never seen. I turned it over. There were 3 names written on the back. Before I could finish reading them, my phone started ringing. Mom. Again. And again. 12 calls. Then my aunt suddenly left our family group chat. Jenna's ex sent me one message. "Delete that photo. Now." I stared at Lucy sleeping on my couch and realized my sister hadn't left that backpack by accident. What happened next explained why my family had spent years convincing me Jenna was the unstable one. My name is Avery Collins. I'm 36 years old, and I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Welcome to Before She Spoke Stories. Jenna arrived at my apartment after 10 with Lucy asleep against her shoulder. She said she needed me to keep her just for tonight. No makeup, no overnight bag, no explanation. Before leaving, she hugged Lucy longer than usual. I asked where she was going. Jenna looked toward the hallway and said, "Somewhere Mom can't follow me." Then she left before I could stop her. The next morning, Jenna still wasn't answering. Inside Lucy's pink backpack, I found her birth certificate copy, allergy medication, and a folded note in Jenna's handwriting. "Please keep Lucy with you. Don't let Mom take her anywhere alone." That was all. No reason, no return date. Nothing explaining why my sister suddenly believed our mother needed to be kept away from her child. I hadn't called Mom yet. She arrived before noon anyway. Diane walked into my apartment carrying groceries and immediately asked where Lucy was. Not where Jenna was. Not whether Jenna had called. Just Lucy. I asked who told her Jenna had left her with me. Mom ignored the question. Then she said something that bothered me even more. "Good. Keep her here for now." Lucy was coloring at my kitchen table when Mom lowered her voice. "Jenna has had enough chances," she said. "She doesn't deserve to keep dragging that child through chaos." I reminded her Jenna had been missing less than 12 hours. Mom replied, "This didn't start last night." When I asked what she meant, she smiled tightly. "You're the reasonable daughter, Avery. Don't make me explain things you already know." 20 minutes later, Mom was making grilled cheese. Lucy looked up and asked, "Grandma, why does Mommy call you Linda at the yellow house?" Mom stopped moving. Only for a second. Then she crouched beside Lucy and said, "Sweetheart, you're mixing up one of Mommy's stories." Lucy frowned. "No. You're Linda there." Mom's smile stayed in place. Her eyes moved directly to me. I asked Lucy what yellow house she meant. Mom answered before she could. "Children combine places. Jenna encourages it." Lucy tried again. "The one with the swing, and the green." Mom cut her off. "Avery, can we discuss this privately?" I had never seen my mother irritated by a 5-year-old's memory. She wasn't correcting Lucy. She was trying to stop her from finishing. "What would you have done?" Questioned Lucy immediately or pretended nothing was wrong until Mom left. Share your answer and subscribe to Before She Spoke Stories. Mom suddenly suggested taking Lucy home with her for the afternoon. "She's overwhelmed," she said. "You have work. I can give you a break." Lucy immediately grabbed my sleeve. I want to stay here. Mom's expression hardened. I reminded her Jenna's note specifically asked me to keep Lucy with me. I didn't mention the part about Mom. Diane stared at me and asked, "What exactly did your sister write?" After Mom left, Lucy asked if she could call the Yellow House. I asked whether she knew the number. She recited the last 4 digits without hesitation. 7712. I searched my contacts. Nothing. I checked Mom's number. Aunt Marcy's, Jenna's, even old family numbers. No match. When I asked who answered that phone, Lucy shrugged. Sometimes Grandma, sometimes the man. That night, I started remembering things I had dismissed. Jenna once claimed Mom carried a second phone. Another time, she accused Diane of lying about a weekend trip. Last Christmas, Jenna asked why Mom bought 2 identical turkeys. We laughed when Diane said the extra one was for church. I had spent years agreeing that Jenna saw conspiracies everywhere. Now her warning sounded less random. While looking for Lucy's pajamas, I emptied the backpack onto my bed. At the very bottom was an old photograph. My mother stood beside a Christmas tree with 2 people I didn't recognize. She looked younger, different somehow. On the back were several handwritten words. Before I could study them, my phone began ringing. Mom. Then again. And again. By the 12th call, Aunt Marcy had left our family group chat. After the 12th call stopped, I finally read the handwriting on the photograph. Linda, Paul, and Emma, Christmas. No last names, no address. Just those 3 names and a date from 18 years earlier. Mom was wearing a ring I had never seen before. I kept staring at the first name. Linda. Lucy had not invented it. Someone had written it beneath my mother's photograph. When I finally answered, Mom didn't ask whether Lucy was okay. She asked, "What did Jenna leave in that backpack?" I mentioned the photograph without reading the names aloud. Mom immediately said it belonged to an old church friend. I asked why she was in it. There was a pause. Then her story changed. Maybe I was helping someone through a difficult Christmas. It was a long time ago. At breakfast, I showed Lucy the photograph without prompting her. She pointed to the younger woman beside Mom and smiled. "That's Aunt Em." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. I asked when she had seen her. Lucy said, "When Grandma takes me to the Yellow House." Not once. Not years ago. Lucy described sleeping there, eating pancakes there, and watching cartoons with someone our family had never mentioned. Lucy said Grandma looked different at that house. She wears the brown glasses and talks softer. Mom owned reading glasses, but I had never seen brown frames. Then Lucy copied a phrase in a gentler Midwestern accent. "Come here, honey. Linda's got you." It sounded nothing like the sharp, polished voice Diane used with us. My 5-year-old niece knew a version of my mother I had never met. 3 years earlier, Jenna had told me Mom carried another phone. I laughed. Mom laughed harder. She claimed Jenna had seen a church volunteer's device inside her purse. Now I remembered something else. Whenever Mom visited my apartment, she kept one particular side pocket zipped. That afternoon, I searched an old family photo. A black phone was visible inside that pocket. Mom's regular phone was already in her hand. 2 years earlier, Mom told us she attended a women's retreat near Green Bay. Jenna insisted she had seen Mom's car outside Madison instead. I called Jenna paranoid. Mom thanked me for being sensible. Now I checked the old group chat. Mom had never shared one photograph from that retreat. But she had sent us a picture of breakfast. The restaurant logo on the coffee cup was from Madison. Last Christmas, Jenna asked why Mom bought 2 identical turkeys. Mom said one was for the church pantry. I remembered carrying both from her car. Neither had a donation label. I asked Lucy whether Grandma ever brought food to the Yellow House. She nodded enthusiastically. "Big turkey. Aunt Em made the potatoes." I had personally carried evidence of Mom's second Christmas and mocked Jenna for noticing it. Mom had spent my entire adulthood calling me reasonable. Jenna was emotional. Jenna exaggerated. Jenna saw danger everywhere. I had accepted the compliment because it made me feel trusted. Now I understood its usefulness. Whenever Jenna questioned Mom, Diane didn't need to defeat the accusation herself. She only needed me to stand beside her and tell my sister she was imagining things. I searched the number Lucy remembered through public directories. The result was registered to Paul Mercer in Madison. The address showed a quiet residential street. Street view imagery revealed a yellow two-story house with green shutters, a stone mailbox, and a large maple beside the driveway. I didn't show Lucy the screen. She walked past, glanced at it, and said, "That's Grandma's other house." I drove to Madison without telling Mom. The yellow house looked exactly like Lucy's drawings, even the wooden swing near the maple tree. I stood on the porch for nearly a minute before knocking. A woman around 23 opened the door. She looked at my face, then at the photograph in my hand. Her expression changed instantly. "You're Avery," she said. I had never seen her before. Then she added, "Linda said you'd never come here." The woman at the yellow house introduced herself as Emma Mercer. Before I could explain why I was there, she asked whether I still hated coconut cake. I hadn't eaten it since I was 9. Emma smiled nervously and said, "Linda told me that." My mother had apparently spent years describing my childhood to a woman whose existence had been completely removed from mine. Emma brought out 3 photo albums. Mom appeared everywhere: Christmas mornings, school concerts, birthdays, graduations. Sometimes she wore brown glasses. Sometimes her hair was styled differently. Every caption called her Linda. Then Emma showed me photographs from the previous summer. Lucy was sitting on the yellow house swing beside Mom. Whatever this was, it had not ended decades ago. Diane was still living it. I asked Emma what Linda was to her. She looked confused by the question. "She's my mom." I thought she meant emotionally. Then Emma showed me a framed hospital photograph of Linda holding her as a newborn. On the back, Paul had written, "Our girls, 2003. Emma was 23. My mother had been raising another daughter while Jenna and I were still living under her roof. Paul Mercer came home while I was still there. He knew my name immediately but looked frightened to see me. According to him, Linda had escaped an abusive marriage years earlier. Robert was controlling. Jenna was seriously unstable, and I supposedly hated my mother for leaving. I said, "Robert was my father. He died 4 years ago." Paul went pale. "Linda told me he died 14 years ago." Emma retrieved her birth certificate from a fireproof box. Father, Paul Mercer. Mother, Linda Shaw. The name was not handwritten or added later. It appeared on the official record. I stared at the document and asked Paul whether he had ever known my mother as Diane Collins. He shook his head. For 24 years, he had apparently loved a woman whose legal history he had never questioned. Emma had grown up believing Jenna and I knew about her. Mom told her I refused photographs, letters, and invitations because I considered Paul's family embarrassing. Emma showed me a birthday card she had written to me at 14. "Maybe someday you'll want to know me." I had never received it. Diane had not merely hidden us from each other. She had made each side believe the rejection came from the other. What would you do at this point? Call Diane immediately, or keep comparing both families' records first? Share your answer, and subscribe to Before She Spoke Stories. Emma led me upstairs to a small bedroom painted pale green. On the dresser sat Lucy's photograph, pajamas in her size, children's books, and a stuffed animal identical to one at Mom's house. "Linda said Lucy might be staying here soon," Emma explained. "Not visiting, staying." Mom had been preparing a room for my niece before Jenna disappeared. Suddenly, Jenna's warning in the backpack made terrifying sense. While turning another album page, I saw a man standing near the yellow house's garage, blue flannel shirt, wire frame glasses, my father. The photograph was dated when I was 14. Paul noticed my face and said, "That was Linda's cousin Robert. He visited twice." I could barely answer. Dad had not discovered this secret at the end of his life. He had stood inside it decades earlier. Paul said Robert's second visit ended in a shouting match behind the garage. The next morning, Linda disappeared from the yellow house and stayed away almost a year. When she returned, she told Paul her cousin had suffered a breakdown and would never interfere again. I remembered that year differently. Mom told us she was caring for Aunt Marcy after surgery. Marcy had never had surgery. My phone rang as I stood in Emma's kitchen. Jenna. Her voice was exhausted but steady. "I'm safe," she said. "I didn't abandon Lucy." I asked why she disappeared. Because Mom was getting ready to take her, and Cole believed everything she told him. Then Jenna lowered her voice. "I found the yellow house 6 months ago." I asked what she had been searching for since. She answered, "The person who knew Mom before she was Diane." Then she gave me one name. Aunt Marcy. Jenna had been calling Aunt Marcy for weeks. Every time she mentioned Linda, Marcy hung up. I sent her the old Christmas photograph instead and wrote, "Jenna is safe. Lucy is with me. I need one truthful conversation." 10 minutes later, Marcy replied with an address outside Milwaukee and one warning: "Do not bring Diane. She cannot know I'm talking." Marcy looked older than I remembered. I placed the photograph on her kitchen table and pointed to Mom. "I know Diane used the name Linda." Marcy shook her head. "No, Avery. You still don't understand." She turned the photograph over, read the caption, and whispered, "Linda Shaw was our younger half-sister." Jenna and I said nothing. Then Marcy added, "She died when she was 17. After Linda died, Mom occasionally used her name when she wanted to go somewhere without leaving a trail connected to Diane Collins. At first," Marcy said, "it was harmless. Hotel reservations, cash purchases, weekends away after arguments with Dad. But eventually, Mom built routines around it. Different glasses, different stories, different social circles." "She stopped borrowing Linda's name," Marcy said. "She started living inside it." Marcy admitted she covered Mom's absences for years. If Dad asked, Diane was helping Marcy. If Paul called, Linda was visiting relatives. Marcy initially believed Mom was escaping an unhappy marriage and needed privacy. Then Emma was born. "I told her she had to choose," Marcy said. Mom answered that choosing would destroy both families. So Marcy helped her avoid choosing anything. Dad discovered Emma when I was 14. He confronted Diane at the Yellow House and threatened divorce. Marcy said Mom stopped him with a secret of his own. Dad had taken money from the college account created for me and used it to rescue his brother's failing business. I had spent years believing scholarships were the reason my college fund had somehow come up short. Dad could expose Mom's second household. Mom could expose what he did with my money. Neither wanted the family to know. So they stayed married and protected each other. Dad accepted her weekends away. Mom never mentioned the missing college funds. Then both of them kept teaching Jenna and me that family loyalty meant honesty. Their marriage hadn't survived because they trusted each other. It survived because each held evidence against the other. Jenna showed me messages Diane had sent Cole over the previous 6 months. Mom described Jenna as increasingly paranoid, unstable, and likely to disappear with Lucy. She suggested that if Jenna collapsed, Cole should temporarily authorize Grandma to care for Lucy while he worked. Cole believed he was preparing for an emergency. Diane was preparing for a transfer. And she had started months before Jenna ever left my apartment. Jenna had photographed Mom's second phone with her old Polaroid because she believed digital pictures might disappear. One image showed 2 separate calendars. Collins' family listed church, birthdays, and visits with us. Mercer House listed Paul, Emma, and several entries marked Lucy overnight. One future entry was circled. Lucy moves in. Tentative. It had been created 3 weeks before Jenna disappeared. Diane came to my apartment the next afternoon with Cole, Aunt Marcy, and a family attorney. She carried proposed temporary care paperwork giving her authority to manage Lucy's school and medical needs if Cole agreed while Jenna was unavailable. Then she gave me the compliment I had heard my whole life. "This is why I trust you, Avery. You know when emotion has gone too far." Finally, I understood what it meant. You're easier to recruit against your sister. I did not argue. I did not show her Jenna's messages, Marcy's confession, Emma's photographs, or the 2 calendars. I looked at the paperwork and said, "Okay, but if we're changing anything involving Lucy, everyone needs to hear the same story." Diane relaxed. "Finally," she said. I suggested dinner the next evening, at the Yellow House. She smiled because she believed I had chosen her side. She had no idea who would already be waiting inside. When Diane entered the Yellow House, she expected Paul, Lucy, and me. Instead, Jenna sat beside Cole. Emma stood near the fireplace. Aunt Marcy was at the dining table. Paul had the old photo albums open in front of him. Diane stopped in the doorway. For 24 years, she had controlled us by keeping every conversation separate. That advantage disappeared the moment we all looked at her together. I did not accuse Mom. I asked one question. "What did Diane tell you about the rest of us?" Paul answered first. He said Avery hated Linda and refused to meet Emma. I said, "I never knew Emma existed." Emma looked at me. Then Jenna said Mom had described Emma as a dangerous woman stalking our family. Nobody needed interpretation. The lies were finally answering each other. Cole admitted Diane told him Jenna was planning to abandon Lucy and disappear. Jenna opened the messages on her phone. Mom told me Cole wanted full custody and was building a case against me. Cole stared at Diane. He had believed he was protecting his daughter. Jenna had believed she was preparing to lose her. Mom had turned 2 worried parents into enemies before either understood there was a fight. Diane ordered Marcy to explain that everyone was misunderstanding old family history. Marcy surprised her. "I covered for you because I thought you needed somewhere safe to go," she said. "Then Emma was born, and I kept helping because admitting the truth would expose me too." Diane called that betrayal. Marcy answered, "No. Betrayal was helping you long enough to make 3 daughters strangers." I placed Dad's photograph from the Yellow House on the table. Mom tried to say Robert had only visited once. Marcy corrected her. Twice. Then she admitted the bargain involving my missing college money. I had spent years believing Dad was the gentler parent. Now I understood both of them had protected their own secrets by spending things that belonged to their daughters: money, trust, and truth. The adults were talking over one another when Lucy walked in holding her Yellow House drawing. She looked at Diane, then at the photograph labeled Linda. "Grandma," she asked, "which one are you today?" Nobody answered. Mom's face collapsed before her voice did. She sat down and whispered, "You don't understand what I had to do." Jenna replied, "Then explain it once, with everybody listening." Mom said she had given each family the version of herself they needed. Paul needed someone free from Robert. Emma needed a mother without complications. We needed Diane. Then Jenna said the sentence that ended every excuse. "No. You gave us different versions so we would never compare them." Mom looked around the room and realized there was no private audience left to manipulate. Her system had depended on separation. Cole withdrew his support for temporary guardianship after seeing Diane's messages, and the Yellow House room prepared for Lucy. Jenna agreed to counseling, clearer co-parenting, and written exchange arrangements with him. Diane received no unsupervised time with Lucy while boundaries were reviewed. I did not take over custody. Supporting Jenna meant helping her become more stable, not replacing her because our mother had trained me to. Would you have cut Diane off completely, or allowed contact only after strict boundaries were in place? Share your answer, and subscribe to Before She Spoke Stories. Paul separated from Diane and began sorting out 24 years of shared finances and false history. Emma did not run into our arms. She told Jenna and me she needed time before deciding what family meant. I understood. We met occasionally without Mom. Sometimes Emma asked questions. Sometimes nobody did. The important change was simple. No one had to ask Diane for permission before speaking to someone else anymore. 3 months later, Lucy brought back her drawing of the 2 houses connected by a road. She added a third little house in the middle. Jenna asked, "Who lives there?" Lucy shook her head. "Nobody. That's where everybody can meet, so nobody has to lie about where they live." Emma laughed, then started crying. I took the old Christmas photograph and corrected the names on the back. Diane, Paul, Emma, no Linda, no invented history. My mother survived for 24 years by making sure her daughters never compared notes. A 5-year-old ended it with one question. "Why do you have 2 names?"